Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson. This is episode 197. Episode 197 of this show. Yay! So specifically today, our show is part of the Help Situation Spotlight series. And this is a series where you, members of the community, share with me questions, concerns, issues, and then we develop a show to try to address and potentially share some solutions. So, thank you. Today, the show topic is one that it's near and dear to my heart. Our specific show episode today is Help Situation Spotlight. Does it really matter where I go to college? Yes. So the episode title is, does it really matter where I go to college? Yes. I have answered the question in the topic right there. The question and the answer in the title of the show. And like I said, it's one of these topics that I've had some recent information and discussions, and I've thought I really need to do this show. So let's dive in. As I said, if you have the opportunity to drop by CourtneyAnderson.com, that's our central website where we've got the show page for this show. There's a page on the site dedicated just to episode 197 to this show. All the links and articles and resources I mentioned will be on that show page. Also, I want to mention that we do have, as we've grown amazingly quickly, this program, we have show sponsors that have partnered with us. So if you see an ad or a link to a product or service on any of our pages on CourtneyAnderson.com and you think, oh yeah, I need that, please go ahead and click and make your purchase through those links on our site so that our sponsors know that you came from us and we can continue to provide you with the best resources possible. I do have to share that I am on Twitter, so you can find me on Twitter at Zealous Business. That makes sense to me. I'm all about business, and I definitely have been told by others that at times I can be perceived as rather zealous. So I'm on Twitter at Zealous Business. Please join in there. And on CourtneyAnderson.com, we have our blog. We have all of the shows and show pages for every single one of this program, which is our daily show. We also have our companion show, which is our video program. So we've got all those episodes. We are adding new material constantly. Please do sign up for our community mailing list when you're on CourtneyAnderson.com. That way you'll be in the know as we continue to bring you new and more resources. We're going to be bringing you webinars and some additional different platforms of content very shortly. And I also want to ask if you found our show somewhere on one of our distribution channels, that's iTunes or Stitcher or Spreaker or Libsyn or anywhere else in the world, please leave a rating or a review and share our show on your social media. I would greatly appreciate that. As I said, this show is one that I felt I needed to do. And when you come to the CourtneyAnderson.com show page for this show, there are a couple of things that I want to try to clarify. There are links on the show page to some other shows that we've done in this program that address really parts of the content today. So let me be really specific. We did a program a while ago, and it was answering the issue of how do I pick the right college for my first degree? So it was talking to an audience of our community members who have not completed their first university degree, and they were trying to figure out, where do I go? What do I do? So that's a show that I really encourage you, if you are in that situation or just thinking about this, take advantage of that show because it specifically talked to people going to college for the first time. And I went and explained as much as I could reasonably about, how the college structure works. This is all from a U.S. Based higher education system, how credit hours work, things of that nature. And I've got has some really good information in there for you, with links to help you kind of wade into the waters and begin to look and see what schools are recognized by different entities as being global providers of a quality education. So those links are on that show, and that show is on this episode page. So CourtneyAnderson.com, episode 197, just come there, and the links are there to this show that we've done previously about picking the right college for your first degree. So it's explaining a little bit more about, college, what it is and how it works in the U.S., and where you can go to get quality information about what school you might want to consider going to. We also did a show previously where someone went to school, went to college, but they hadn't finished. And so that show, that was episode 129. And again, I've got the links on this show page for this episode 197. But that show was entitled, I Went to School But Never Finished. How can I use the education I have? And again, I've got information there if you're in that situation. If you're a community member and you say, hey, this isn't, my first time going to college. I've been to college. I just, haven't yet finished. So there's a show we had. We've got extra resources on that part of the site. So there's links and everything on this episode page, 197. We also did a show in our Financial Fierceness series, and it was entitled, What Rich Families Know About College That Poor Families Don't. And that was episode 118. Again, links are in this show page on CourtneyAnderson.com, episode 197. And in that episode, the one I just mentioned about financial fierceness and rich families know about college, there were some good things for you to think about in terms of school and higher education. And so some links on the show page have some quotes. And one of them talks about Harvard University, which is certainly a globally known school in the U.S. And it says, this is the quote here, and it says from Forbes, it says at Harvard, 45.6% of undergraduates come from families with incomes above $200,000. In other words, incomes in the top 3.8% of all American households. And so in that show, which I really encourage you if you haven't taken part in, we discuss what's the deal with money and why do rich people approach college statistically differently as a group from people who haven't achieved higher levels of financial wealth. And so I think that statistic is really illustrative of a lot of the points we were discussing in that show. And it really ties into this program. Okay. I also would mention that I did a show where I talked about finishing school when I was my first college degree by the time I was 20 years old. And so that's another show. We've got the links for that on the show page. And it just did a little bit about my journey and things of that nature if you are interested in that aspect of it. Here's what my bottom line big picture is. What do you want? And what do I mean by that? Exactly what I asked. So I've had discussions with people, right? And let's say that you're somebody, and let's say you're someone, and you're 50 years old. You're financially independent. You more all of your financial resources are stable. You've got a diversity of resources. You've got assets, and you're diversified. And you just think, you know what? I have a little bit of free time, and I love learning stuff. I just like to learn some stuff. So I think I might go to college, pick up some sort of education in something. If you are not going to college specifically because you want to increase your income, then it does not matter where you go to college. Now, I touched on this in some of the other shows because it's a really important distinction. And the thing when we start talking about, school is people can get very frustrated and say, look, my situation is such that it really doesn't matter where I go to school because I don't, I'm not using the education for anything other than just my own, edification and enjoyment. Like, I don't care about a return on my investment. I'm paying for it myself. I have plenty of resources, so I'm not concerned about, loans or debt or anything like that to go to school. that's a different population than a population who is intending to, quote, go to college and unquote, but really what they mean, I hope, is that they're going to graduate from college. And their primary motivation is for money. And like I said, we touched on this in other programs because it's, again, an important distinction. What do you want is the answer to everything. Because if you're going to school and it's related to your money and your income, then we're going to talk to you in this program. And you're the person, you're the community member that this show is for, where it says, does it really matter where I go to college? Yes, I'm talking to you. If you have a financial incentive for school. If you don't have a financial incentive, then it doesn't matter at all where you go because you're just going for fun. Right? It's just sort of like a hobby. So it doesn't matter where you go at all. You're paying for it. So you're not, all this stuff about people taking out loans and the United States especially, this is what I'm talking about. In many parts of the world, it's part of the societal benefits that, you know, students can go to university without extra fees. And some parts of the world, students can go to, you know, primary school and secondary school with no fees. In the U.S. and the States, primary school and secondary school, in the U.S. they're called public schools because they're part of the government. And they're free. And so, like I said, some parts of the world, you don't have situations like that. But you have that in the States and many other parts of the world where, you know, a child can go to elementary school and middle school and up to, you know, high school through a teenager. And that's free. In the U.S., beyond that, though, it's not free. So that's why there's a lot of discussion in the U.S. about money for college. It's a big discussion because there's not another system that you can go to where you just sort of continue on with your free government education past high school. All right. So what I said, the reason why I felt I needed to schedule and do the show is because I've had some discussions with people who their intention was, as they've expressed it to me, was to be able to earn more money. And then they went to schools that are not going to help them do that. And now they already went to the school. Like they already went there and they spent money on it. Worse than that, some people borrowed money, a loan, they took a loan out so they could go to the school. And some of them have already, you know, they graduated, they finished the school. And then I've had discussions with people and they'll say, well, okay, I'm so excited, I finished. And I'm like, yeah, you finished, because graduation and finishing college, I don't care where you went, is awesome. Just finishing anything is good, right? We did it, we finished it. The challenge, though, was that I've talked to people, and this has been over the last, 20 years, but, certainly I've had some recent discussions with people who they say, okay, I finished school, I'm so happy, now I'm ready to go out and, earn a lot more money because now I have this, this fancy degree. And I've had to share with them that they're not going to necessarily be in the situation that they thought they were, because it does matter where you went to school if you're going to use the education for financial gain. Okay. In the show notes, you'll see that I made a couple of points. In general, if you want to use the education for financial gain, now again, if you don't care about financial gain because you already have all the money that you anticipated, you're financially comfortable, is the terminology we use in a lot of our financial fierceness series shows, and that just means that you got the money to pay your bills, you also have money in different assets and different resources that, something bad happened, you can just, grab into one of your resources and assets or accounts and access the money, so you're comfortable. You're not worried about money. You already have plenty of money. Okay. That is a different group than the group who is only going to school or is primarily going to school because they were told to go to school to make more money. And I felt like the show needed to be done because it's not fair to somebody who was told by society collectively, go to college, right? And then they did that. And then they're told, well, yeah, but you're not really going to be able to benefit financially the way you thought you were. And then they get really, and I don't blame them, they get mad. And they feel like, well, I did what you told me to. You said go to college. I went to college. Now what? And that's why I'm doing this show. And it's difficult to do the show because I have to try to explain or share knowledge in a way that's not one, it's never one size fits all. That's why we're doing all this, explaining about the different categories. If you want money from college, that's what we're talking to you in the show. If you don't, then the show doesn't mean anything to you, because it does not matter where you go to school, because you're not using that education to go out and try to get more financial compensation. You just did it because you wanted to learn stuff. All right. Let's do this. The majority of what we talk about when we talk about college and universities, those are institutions that were founded historically. Again, I'm talking U.S. specific because that's where I went to school and it's where I teach. So that's the university system that I know most clearly. Historically, higher education was what it sounded like. It was a place that people would go to get a higher education than what was available to them, either in their local communities or through community schools, or at some point in the nation's history, the government started to run schools. And so it's always been a really small number of people that go to this higher education, because it makes sense. You don't need higher education for everybody, because only a small number of people have, really specific skills, and they really enjoy school that much, right? Like, a lot of people say, hey, I did the school I had to do because I had to do it, but now I'm ready to go out and do other stuff. I don't want to go to school anymore. And that's very reasonable. And in fact, the majority of people, the overwhelming majority of people in the United States and most parts of the world, are in that position. What's started to happen recently, and by recently I mean in the last couple of decades, is you've seen a difference in a growing difference in the opportunities you have professionally based on how much school you have. Here's a quote on the show page, and then of course the show page is episode 197, and so that's what I'm referring to. Go to CourtneyAnderson.com, the episode 197 page, and you'll see the links I've read from and the ones I'm talking about. Here's to help you understand what I mean. A statistic. So this is from Pew, and it's an organization that purportedly has, according to some analysis, some data in terms of surveys and analysis of research on demographics and a lot of different questions based on what the identified population feels or believes or does. So it's data collection. All right. So here's what I'm reading from the Pew link, and again, this is on the show page. It says, in 1979, so obviously that's not today, 1979 was in the past. In 1979, when the first wave of baby boomers were the same age that millennials are today, the typical high school graduate earned about 3/4, 77%, of what a college graduate made. Today, millennials with only a high school diploma earn 62% of what the typical college graduate earns. Okay, so this is from 2014, and it's saying that in 1979, the data showed, or their interpretation of the data is, that when people who are baby boomers, so those are people who were born during and right after World War II, so they were young people in 1979, right? Younger. When the first wave of baby boomers were the same age that millennials are today. Millennials are young people today, right? Somebody in their 20s, early 20s. All right. So when the people today that are retiring, that are their 60s on average, when they were in their 20s, that they could earn with the high school education about 77% of what a college graduate made. So it's not the same, it's not 100%, but okay, 77%, it's close-ish. Today, people who are the same young age with only a high school diploma only earn 62% of what a typical college graduate earns. So what I'm arguing is what I said before, that in recent decades, that the gap between income and professional opportunities in terms of economic opportunities has gotten larger. Now, it's always going to be, well, I actually don't know that. That's the future. It always has been that a small minority percentage of people actually go and earn and complete college. It just makes sense because it's a lot of extra time. And not everybody needs really specific skills. And more importantly, not everybody wants that. We just talked about that, right? But it used to be that someone who said, okay, I don't want to go to college. I'm not interested in this. I've done what I had to do for school, and now I have skills, and I'm going to go out and earn a living and have a life and be happy. Went about and did that, and there was a gap. There was a gap between how much they made on average versus someone who completed college made, but it was smaller than it is today. Okay. So what's tended to happen, this is just my own interpretation, obviously, is that you always had the group of people who went to college because that's what their family, and people hate this word, but that's what their socioeconomic class, that's what they did, right? So if your parents went to college and their parents went to college, your grandparents went to college, and you grow up thinking, well, yeah, everybody goes to college. And I've shared, and we discussed, as I said in some of the other programs, that's the family environment I grew up in. Both of my parents have multiple college degrees. Both of my grandparents, both my grandmothers have college degrees. Both of my grandparents' parents had college degrees. My grandmother, on my dad's side, her parents taught at a university together. In fact, the same university she went to and her sister. So they really love school, right? And then on my maternal side, her parents and my grandmother's uncle, and I've had a show where I would talk about him, and he was a lawyer. He was a lawyer that took cases and fought cases that were some of the most important cases in the United States at the highest level, that helped change the laws that allowed people of different colors and ethnicities to go into different schools and reside in different areas. I mean, he's and I put links to his entries in the Library of Congress and links to the work he did with one of the Supreme Court justices in the United States that passed away. Obviously, but worked with him on cases that he held as a lawyer before he became a Supreme Court justice. And so I come from a family on both sides where there's generations and generations. I'm the fourth generation and the fifth generation on the other side of college graduates. So I grew up in that environment where that's what everybody does. Not just me, not just my parents, not just my grandparents, but their parents. And one grandmother, her grandfather was a medical doctor, right? So it's like, that's what I grew up with, and I put links, like I said, in other programs where you can read a little bit about some of that family history and understand a little bit. So when that's what you come from, that's what you know, that's what you do. Now, of course, the other thing is you also, because of all this education, I'm mentioning the jobs that all these people did. Lawyer, medical doctor, manager, executive, teacher. I mean, that's what, you're used to. That's not just role models, but that's what that's what everyone is doing. So it's normal for you, and you have a totally different mindset. And in that mindset, what tended to happen historically, even in all communities, so whether it's gender or ethnic or religious background or whatever, but in all communities, the group of people that went out and had more education, especially when there were really small numbers of them, then obviously they had more economic opportunity, they had more social prominence and capital, right? So it sort of, it feeds itself. And the statistic I read earlier about at Harvard, these numbers are incredibly high, right? 45.6% of undergrads from these families with incredibly high income. Well, that's because that's the group of people who their whole life, that's what they know. And that's what they're planning on. And the weird thing, the dichotomy that just is so strange to me, you have part of society, it's a small percentage of society, understand this. But part of society, and it's the group of people who everybody, not everybody, but there's a history and expectation that you're going to go, to school, and not just go, but you're going to go, obviously, you're going to complete your degree, you're going to complete multiple degrees, and you're going to go do these types of jobs that require a lot of education, but also, of course, then they typically pay more, and then bring with them entree into these different, social and societal social groups and, sororities and all this kind of other stuff too, which is really important as part of that experience, right? And the weird, like I said, the thing to me that's so weird is there's this part of society where people are obsessed, and I do mean obsessed, from before they even decide to have children, with planning and plotting and setting that kid up, even a potential kid, to get into, quote, the best school they can. And that's a serious thing. And so you have people put immense amounts of money and resources, into ensuring that their child, and I'm not exaggerating at all, I mean, seriously, is able to, from the moment before they're even conceived, ready to be as competitive as possible to go to, quote, the best schools. And then there's tutoring, and there, enrichment programs and camps and everything that can be done so that child is going to go to, quote, the best school. And what do they mean by the best? Well, it's like anything else. I mean, as I said earlier, many of the schools that are quote the best or some of the older schools and the schools that are more prominent in different fields, and that's where people in this small percentage of the overall population, that's where they put so many other resources, because it's a foregone conclusion in their mind that of course your child's going to go to school, but they want their child to go to the best school. So maybe an Ivy League school, or another a school, one of the Seven Sisters, or another, a school with the reputation and the caliber, so that that they can continue on with, the type of professional and social and life opportunities that they're used to. That's what they're focused on, and they're really competitive about this. And there's this incredible amount of media coverage. And I don't have children as of the time we're doing this show, but there's an incredible amount of media coverage, and a lot of the newspapers and periodicals I read where people are just, they're obsessed about this, right? Getting their kid into the right preschool, getting their kid, and these are often private pay programs, obviously, where people spend enormous amounts of money to ensure that their children have the most competitive, again, as a 3-year-old, as a 5-year-old, as a 9-year-old, the whole thing is a plan to get their child to this, this wonderful, great opportunity, in life. And they put a lot of resources, and again, it's very competitive. Their child getting into, quote, the right college is everything. Not everything, not in the whole scheme of life, but I mean, it's a big deal at that age. So, because they've been prepping, right, since before the child even existed, to make sure it has all of the right tutors and enrichment and language and talent and everything, so that child, by the time that child's a teenager and getting their acceptance letters to which colleges, this has been, a thing that's been worked on for, 15, 16, 17 years. And then sometimes people are disappointed. The child maybe didn't get in, their number one school they wanted to get into. So they got in what they sometimes call a safe school, which is another school that's a fine school. But, it's not the number one that they wanted to go to the most for whatever reason. But they're fine. They go to a good school and, quote unquote, and they have, they still have exactly the same opportunities in terms of their social and their economic and all of this. Okay. So while that's going on, there's another group of people who themselves actually, often the parents and grandparents, didn't go to school. Many times there are people who immigrate to the U.S., but they have, for a combination of individual reasons and sometimes cultural, an expectation that education is incredibly important, higher education. And in many instances, it's interesting because I've talked to and known people over the years, especially in these communities where the parents and grandparents didn't have advanced education, but they are determined, and I do mean determined, that their children will. They will actually decide, again, from the earliest time, but often I'm sure the same situation before the child even exists, before the child's even born, right? That the child's going to have a certain type of job that in their mind represents this opportunity and the door opening to a better life for everybody. So usually they're going to be medical doctor, engineer, in some instances, lawyer. In the U.S., it's a very high income, historically high income profession. Anything in the what they call the hard sciences, often. A chemist, a biologist, and that's because people in those communities, especially when the parents themselves didn't have a lot of economic opportunity or higher education, they do understand that it's the key. And often people have risked everything, economically, sometimes their lives and their safety, to get their children to have a chance to go to these great schools. As I said, many times, especially with people who've immigrated to different parts of the world, so their child can have a better opportunity. And there, again, is this as a coverage in a lot of the daily materials I read, where people sometimes, they wonder, are they pushing their kids too hard, right? These expectations that, you're going to study and study some more, and you're going to, they even, and some parts of the world, they have what they call cram schools. This is an English explanation, but basically, so that the expectation is that the child, that's what they're going to do. And I mean, from the earliest time, they're going to cram and study, and work hard, and they're going to do their best because it's so important. So that's one group. So one group of the society from these sort of different perspectives, but the core is that they are focused and obsessed with their kid going to literally, quote, the best school that they can, and they put decades of time and work into this, and a lot of pressure on these kids too. A lot of pressure. So they have a whole nother, challenge with kids getting overwhelmed and feeling that they're disappointing people, and this is a whole nother, emotional, psychological challenge. But it's a really intense pressure that's put on this. It's a subset of the population, obviously small minority population, minority of the entire population, but people are competing in this incredible race, right? To see, what schools I got in, what my test scores were for entrance exams, the PSAT and the SAT in the U.S., and just doing everything they can think of, extracurricular, this and that, like to compete, right? And then you have this huge, in terms of numbers, right, relative numbers. Like I said, small minorities doing this, competing, putting everything into this, we got to do this. And then you have this large majority population of society that I don't even think they're aware that this is going on, that this intense competition to get into, quote, the best schools is going on, while you have this large population of the society that's not competing at all. They're not even thinking about it. And so like I said, it's such a strange situation to watch it. And you even have people who are in these family and cultural groups who may not even be the most academically talented, right? They're not someone that either through, data or performance is probably naturally inclined to be that academically talented, right? But their entire society and experience shapes them that this is what you're going to do. You can have someone who's, maybe brilliant, right? Maybe natural, intellect is just incredibly rare. And that person comes from an environment where no one even is competing or doing anything to get them ready for this world. And they don't even apply to college. So there's this amazing amount of information and data I read and meetings I attend where there's discussion about how can you get people who are really academically talented to even apply to college, much less apply to the, quote, good schools that everybody else is competing and knocking themselves out to get into, right? And it's such a weird question because you get people in the other group who comes from those expectations where they've been primed their entire life and supported and cajoled and sometimes even, reprimanded. You got to get into whatever, school. And will do everything and beyond what they're capable of to make that happen. And you have other people who maybe naturally have intellectual gifts where it's easier for them in terms of the work, but they have no access to or knowledge even of what's going on. It's so weird. I really do watch this and think, how do you? But when you step back, I get it, right? Like they're just different worlds almost. And so the population typically who I'm not talking to in the show is the population that comes from this sort of larger group, majority group, who no one ever, they were so out of the running, right? And we talk about data in so many different shows. I'm thinking now of the show we did about vocabulary and the data we shared in the show about how your vocabulary impacts your paycheck, but we also talked about how a parent's vocabulary impacts their child's learning, and how the parent with the smaller vocabulary actually impedes their child's skill development, so that by the time their child would enter into the public schools for their first grade at 5 or 6 years old, their child is several years behind the academic and skill development of the child who came from an information vocabulary rich environment. And it's staggering. The data is staggering. And so if you have somebody who comes from the environment where nobody even was playing this other game, right, that happens before, birth, to get that kid ready to compete and be their best, right? It's just so ripe for someone being taken advantage of. And that's the reason we're doing the show, and this is the reason why I'm, passionate about this. The group who's primed from before they were even aware of it for school, they're not asking a question about does it matter where I go. Of course they know that it does. That's why they're competing to get into the quote best school they can. What's the best school? Here, basically it's like this. The schools that have the reputation and the record, to be very fair, and are more difficult to get into, meaning they take a smaller percentage of people that apply to their school. They're more competitive to get into. Those are the ones usually people want to go to. Now, sometimes people are from a certain geographic part of the U.S. where they went to a certain state school that they just love, and that's really important that their kids are going to go to that state school, so they just sort of focus on that. And those schools are usually, again, in these top schools too, but so sometimes people have extra little tweaks to it, like you will go to the University of Virginia, or you will go to the University of Texas, or you will go to, UC Berkeley or whatever, or University of Michigan, and often it's because, again, that family or somebody in there went there, or just wanted to sometimes. Okay, so the people that are in that competitive thing, who since they were like 4 years old have been studying different languages and learned 5 different instruments and went to all these different enrichment camps and had 9 tutors for the stuff that was hard for them, and they of course they know it matters. They spend their whole life on this, and sometimes incredible amounts of money, so that they can get the best testing programs, so they can get the best scores on those exams, the PSAT and the SAT. I mean, they're in the game, at least they're playing. They're in it to win it, right? And then you have this whole other population, these massive numbers of people who are doing nothing. They're not doing any of it. And they actually ask the question, which seems to me, again, so odd, does it matter where I go? And it's like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Let me again clarify. I'm talking, again, the sort of trajectory of an entire life cycle. So again, if you're midlife, or even if you're 20 years old and you're independently wealthy, then no, it doesn't matter really. And you'll see that often with kids who come from a lot of wealth and are also given access to the wealth. So you can come from a wealthy family and not be given the wealth. Sometimes people are given the wealth. Sometimes it's put in a trust. Often, in fact, it's put in a trust. And they're referred to as trust fund kids. And it's what it sounds like. They're kids that have trust funds. So they have money that's in a trust. And there's usually rules about how they can access it and how much they'll get. But it's that same idea of being financially independent. So they're not really worried. It doesn't really matter if they graduate from school, because if they graduate, nice. But if they don't, people might be mad at them or disappointed in them, but they already have money. So again, it's a different mindset. That person is totally aware, though. I've not known a trust fund kid, and I hate that term because it does sound derogatory, and there's nothing wrong with the trust. I certainly myself use trust and have set trust up, and there's nothing that anyone, if you're born into that, you don't control it. It's not like you did anything. So we want to make sure we're aware of how offensive that can be, but that's the terminology and that people recognize. It's just, what it basically means is you're not worried about the money because you already have money from places. And it may not be something that makes you happy. So whether you finish or what college you went to, it's really important in your culture, but it's not that important, in your whole life, because you're already doing well, relatively speaking. So people may have other interests in arts or the environment or some other work that they do that's really important to them, and then they'll use the fact that they have the trust fund in a really positive way, but they won't necessarily maybe finish the school that their family wanted them to go to, because that wasn't really their passion. And that's a good choice if you're making healthy, good decisions. What we're talking about in the show is the person who is from that community where they honestly don't even understand what's going on. And what's going on is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a global rush. I keep talking about the U.S. and I said a lot of people immigrate, but there are people from all over the world who didn't immigrate at all, but they're totally aware of how important it is to go to the best universities in the world, and they're applying from wherever it is that they live, and then they're termed international students when they come from wherever they live to go to these other countries to study, and you have them in every part of the world. You have international students, and they get it, right? That's why they applied to begin with. They totally understand that. That's why you get somebody from a part of the world that is really far away, relatively speaking, on a map, and they end up at a school, and you might think, well, how did you even end up here? Well, because I applied. Duh. The other thing is, why they applied is because they understand this sort of global rush in a knowledge economy. Then he with knowledge is going to be in a better situation than he who's without knowledge. I'm oversimplifying this really. But it's so, again, odd to me, because there are people who are in a location in the States or in Europe or in Australia or in Asia or in Africa who aren't even applying. And again, it's so strange. But it's not strange if you look at it and understand why they're not. It's because they didn't come from a culture or background where anybody even explained to them what this sort of competition is. They're not even in race. They're not even in the race. They don't even know the race is going on. So while you have these other people who are doing literally everything they can to prepare for an entrance exam for your university, sometimes to a point that it hurts them. I mean, physically or emotionally, people have breakdowns because it's so important that they get the best score, that they retake it, and they have all these again, tutoring and programs they go to, and people work with them to help them practice so they can just, nail it on these exams. You have that group doing that, while at the same time you have other groups who don't even sign up for the test at all. They don't even take it. It's so strange. And I had a discussion with somebody relatively recently who had never taken any entrance exam for college ever. I mean, I was shocked by this, which I shouldn't have been. But it just shows us our own bias and how we don't open up our minds. And I was talking, and I was saying, well, how is this possible? And the person explained. They didn't come from, obviously, one of these environments where that was what their parents and family and grandparents and everybody, since the time they were born, told them that was really important and helped them prepare for it. And they just finished school. Nobody at their school ever said anything about taking these tests. And in the U.S., I explained in more detail in some of the other shows about education, they have what they're called community colleges in the U.S., which are what they sound like. They're basically schools for people to go and get continuing education, job training skills, and you get the first level of a college degree, which is a 2-year college degree, called an associate's degree in most instances. So, and now some community colleges award a 4-year undergraduate degree, but those are rare. Okay, so in general, community colleges have entrance requirements that are different from a 4-year school because they're a 2-year school, which makes sense. And so it's possible for somebody to never have taken any entrance exams for school, gone to a community college, finished that, or gone to another school and gotten an undergraduate degree where they didn't have requirements for tests, and now they never took it. And I was explaining to the person that I really think they should at least understand what the tests are, because I was saying, this is why it came up. The person was saying they wanted to go to a graduate school program and earn a doctorate degree. And I was saying, that's an awesome goal, because, I believe in education. And we started talking about these details, and when they explained to me they've never taken any kind of exam, I said to them, there's no way you're going to even be able to apply to a competitive school without any of these test scores ever. And then they said something along the lines of, well, I'll just go take it. I guess they thought it was like something online you just sign up for right now, and it takes like 20 minutes. I was trying to explain to them, these tests are really intense. And I was explaining, people prepare for the exam. Now, some people prepare for, years. But even if it's just an exam to get into some of the graduate programs, people take the time, like months and months, and they prepare and they take, practice classes, and it's a big deal. And the person was sort of like, my impression was they were getting frustrated with me. Like I was making up something that, like an obstacle, and I wasn't. What I was trying to do is explain to them, if you're going to go and earn a very high level or higher level degrees, you need to go and earn it. What are you going to do with it? Right? That's the question I asked before. What do you want? What do you want? And they said, oh, well, I want to get this, a doctorate, and I want to go teach at a big university. I want to go be a professor, which I said, great. I think that's an awesome job, right? What I was trying to explain to them, though, is that's a very competitive field. We have a whole series where I talk to educators about education issues. That's our Educators Eden series. So check that out if you want to explore some specific education topics. But I was trying to explain to them, the only way you're going to be able to get sort of the fantasy idea of a really high-paying job, and the data shows that historically, and from especially the large leading, especially research universities, that the salaries are, now I'm talking for professors and full-time, they are relatively high. And I said, if you want that, then you have to be able to earn the most competitive, degree you can. When you go, you're going to have to go compete with other people. And I said, you're going to be competing with people who earn their doctorate from, the University of Texas at Austin, and earn their doctorate from Harvard, and earn their doctorate from, Princeton. Like, you're going to have to, that's who you're going to be competing with. So you need to be able to really show why you're the best candidate. And I was trying to explain this process, and I was explaining that you ideally want to go to the most competitive school that you can, so that then you'll have the most competitive skill sets, and then you'll be the best qualified applicant for the position. The person got really, my interpretation was really more frustrated, and I think they felt like I was just making it sound harder than it is, but I'm not. What I'm saying is, in the show notes, I included a few links to some of the disturbing, and this would be a whole, dissertation really, but there are organizations very few, but they do exist, who aren't focused on providing the highest level skill set to their students. And instead might have been interested in exploiting financially someone. And then that was maybe their primary goal, and then they weren't really focused on the caliber of education the person got. Now, this is something that is a very contentious discussion in a lot of higher ed, because no one wants to admit that, right? Because it sounds like a horrible thing to say. Like, I don't really care if somebody learns much at my school, I just want money from them. That's a horrible thing, and I've never actually heard anybody say that. But when you look at some of the reports of places that exploited international students, we talked about that earlier, international students, we said people, and I'm not exaggerating, literally risk their lives often because they know how important it is for their children and grandchildren to have the best education, the best schools in the world, right? And so there's a link I put in there to an article from the, and the article says, the title of the article says, "Little known colleges exploit visa loopholes to make millions off foreign students." And it's an article that talks about how, again, students outside the U.S. from foreign countries have been exploited and been given an opportunity to study in the U.S., given a visa and an opportunity to study, but then the school didn't provide the caliber of education that the students would need to be as competitive as possible. So that's one example. And there are many different discussions, as I said, often very contentious, where people who are unaware of what they deserve from a college education have been exploited by organizations who have benefited from their income. So if you don't know that earning the most competitive skills is the key to having all these wonderful financial opportunities, if you don't know that, if you just think, and we did a show a while ago, right, about a degree is just a piece of paper, and again, the argument to me is so weird. Like, I think, why would you think that? That's the strangest thing I've ever heard. But I can sort of see it. If you come from an environment where you didn't, no one in your family, no one in your community, there was no pressure on you at all to prepare and plan and spend your whole life getting ready to apply to these great schools and get these test results and everything as a teenager, and you never even were aware of any of that was going on, then it makes sense that even though you've heard of college, everyone's heard of it pretty much because it's mentioned all the time, you don't necessarily understand what it is that college is or does or whatever that results in this different life in terms of income, in terms of, even social and professional opportunities. You don't know what it is because you've not been there, and nobody that you know has been there. So it just seems like whatever this thing is called college, if you can just get the whatever piece of paper from there, then I do understand from that perspective how someone could be exploited. Because, in some ways, and this is very U.S. specific, you have all this dialogue in the media and even in schools, right? You need to go to college. People say that. So if you're someone who doesn't come from that environment where people were preparing you, reading to you, and giving you the enrichment, giving you the big vocabulary, making sure you were in the summer program, doing all this stuff because they were focused from, the time you were, before you were born on getting you ready for your skills to be elite so that you could go to the, most competitive school possible and have this great, professional opportunity in your life. If you had none of that at all, none, and all you heard was, college, you're not even sure what college is. You've not been to it. You don't know. There's nobody that obviously took enough care or attention to, and they didn't know themselves. I can't fault a community or a family or a foster parent who doesn't provide the resources, because the only reason you would do that is if you didn't know yourself, right? I can't teach you what I don't know. So you can see how somebody would be vulnerable and think, okay, everyone keeps telling me college. So if I get college, whatever that thing is, then I'll have the opportunity to get this money and have this better life. That itself is not an unreasonable decision. The challenge, though, is you have to understand what you're supposed to be entitled to, what college it means. And if you don't understand that, then you're vulnerable to someone who's exploiting. just for financial gain. And That's what I'm so focused on. So when I was having a discussion with the person who was getting mad at me, and they were like, "Oh, I'm going to go get a doctorate," and they never even told me what, but they're going to get a doctorate and whatever, and then they're going to go be a professor at MIT. I'm not saying that they won't do that. I want them to do that. That's why I was getting frustrated. I was trying to explain to them how to do that and give you the best opportunity. And the best opportunity is to get the most competitive entrance requirements and then go to the most competitive school so that it makes sense to me. What is college? It's school. And I wrote in the show notes, because this is how I see it. Your money professionally from work is tied to your skills. So if I'm an excellent carpenter, I'm going to make more money than somebody who's a horrible carpenter, and my stuff that I put together as a carpenter falls apart, people can't rely on it. Right? It's like that with everything. But the more rare your skills are, then obviously the more money you're going to command in the market, because there's less supply of people who can do what you can do. So you'll see all these modern stories as the time that I'm making this program, where you'll get really young people with no formal education. Sometimes they didn't even finish their primary, or secondary school. They dropped out or never even, had a great opportunity, but they've taught themselves really advanced technical skills. And because there's so few people that have advanced technical skills, the fact that they're really young and or that they don't have any formal education is irrelevant. Nobody cares, because they can do things technically that need to be done. So so people will pay them more money. People don't pay you for a piece of paper that says you graduated from high school. What they pay you for is what you can do. Some people who finish high school have very elite level math skills that are going to allow them to make money with those skills. Some people have elite level writing skills. Some people will have elite level artistic skills. Some people will have no skills of note at all. So that they have a high school diploma, the fact that they can't do anything. You're an employer, and that's the position I've been in, the majority of my career is, will I hire this person at my law firm? Well, no, not if this is how you can't, compose an email that's, grammatically correct. If you don't speak in a way when you answer the phone, then I would want you to talk to my customer and client that way. If you have such a poor grasp of basic, math, what can I do? Or critical thinking skills. So it's like the skills are what gets you money. What universities and even high schools do, more competitive ones, are a message to the world. Hey, this person met very stringent entrance requirements and completion requirements. And it's a shorthand way for people in society to know, look, if they graduated from that school, often even if they just gained admittance to that school, sometimes, like I said, they have parts of the U.S. where they have high schools that are very competitive to get into, right? They have entrance requirements. If you went to these schools, then if somebody's an employer, it's a shorthand way for them to know, hey, look, they wouldn't have gotten into that school unless they had really high-level skills. Those schools only accept people with high-level skills. And I need those high-level skills. So it's a shorthand way for people to know, now I'm going to get high-level skills. Now, it's not perfect. So there are people, like I said, and I've witnessed this myself, who, as a student and even in different parts of my life, who did go to really competitive schools, but often what happened is they came from that environment where everybody, they had a lot of financial resources and everybody, threw tutors and support at them. And the truth is they have really weak skills. And when you remove all of their tutors and support skills and ask them to do things, you learn quickly. Like they had an advantage that helped sort of prop them up, but on their own they really can't perform. And that does come to light, right? Especially as they move through adulthood. But sometimes those people have so many good connections due to their wealth and everything, where it doesn't really matter anyway if they work. So that happens from time to time, but what you tend to see is a correlation between the skills and the schools that represent high-level skills with people can actually do things. And that's why then they earn more money. It's the skills. So all that's to say, if you're asking because you want money, we said that a long time ago at the beginning of the show that you wanted more money, that's why we're talking to you, right? And you're asking, well, does it matter where you go to college? Well, yeah, it matters intensely where you go to college. You have to go to the college where you're going to get the best skills. Now, that's where it breaks down, where I said there's disturbing, and it's heartbreaking, actually, and it also makes me just beyond upset. Examples where people want the best skills, but because they don't have the cultural or family or personal ties for someone to have taught them how you figure out what places have the best skills, then they're vulnerable to somebody taking advantage of them and saying, hey, over here, look at me, I'll give you a college degree. And often what you'll see is this correlation. And you used to see it on television. I don't see this anymore. I know some of the places that used to on television in the U.S. run these ads. They don't exist any longer. They went out of business. But there used to be commercials, and it would say something, and it would run during a time when, like, daytime, and most people were at work, so you wouldn't see it unless you were on, your lunch break or something, or maybe you were sick and you weren't, and you just had the TV on for companionship during the day, and it would say something like, and it used sort of slang, and it would basically say, you want to go to college? It's easy. You can be in your pajamas and laying on your couch. I can get you a college degree. Call this number or whatever. Go to this website. And it was speaking to a really specific demographic, right? And basically it was saying, like, if you want more money, then we'll give you college. And it's easy. It'll be so easy. All you have to do is just, call or email or whatever, and it'll be easy. You can do it in your pajamas. You don't have to get dressed. It's so easy and easy. And if someone's telling you it's easy, then you automatically know that they're not on your team. We've done so many programs. We even did a program, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. And the point is this: having high-level skills is not easy. That's why they're high level. It either takes you a lot of time or a lot of either natural talent or both. And it takes really high-level teaching. That's why in a lot of trades, skilled trades, there's an internship, right? So I'm learning how to be a better plumber. I'm learning how to be a better electrician. I'm learning how to be a better carpenter. I'm interning under somebody who's a master plumber or a master carpenter. And they're teaching me every day. So I'm learning. And it takes a long time for me to get to the level that I need to before I can go out and say, okay, now I'm the highest skill possible. There's no easy way to do it. And I don't care if it's a trade or getting a doctorate from a leading university or anything else. If you want to become the best skill, that's going to take you some combination of talent and time. And none of it is going to be easy. Because if it was easy, then everybody in the whole society on this entire planet would jump up and go do it. There would be no poverty at all if it was easy to go out and just be, quote, rich. Then everyone would go do that. Right? So on the shows, the other shows I mentioned about, the right college, or I can't sit here and say, go to, XYZ college and your life will be a dream. And if you go to ABC college, your life will be horrible. Because that's not true. The first question, the most important question, what do you want? If you say to me, look, I'm just going to school because I'm interested and I have some free time and it's a hobby and I already have all my money that I'm concerned about and I'm financially comfortable and independent, so then go anywhere you want. It doesn't even matter if you go to a school that's giving you a quality education, except for this. Even though you don't want the money, I would argue ethically, if you're going to take the time, why not get a better education? I have personally taken classes at all types of institutions. I've taken classes at community colleges that were excellent from really skilled, amazing teachers and faculty, where I learned a lot and had so much fun learning. I've taken classes at very competitive research universities that were amazingly informative. I've also had times where I've been in institutions that are amazing, but I unfortunately ran into a class where the teacher either wasn't able at that time, maybe was having a tough time, or it didn't go well at all. And I wasn't able to have exposure to the high-level skills that I should have. So, look, there are no guarantees. What these things are is it's just a way for you to make your life, and I'm going to use this word even though we just talked about what we did. It makes your life easier. I've said this before. The reason why you'll see, especially with families where the parents and grandparents didn't have a high-level education and income, but they pushed their kid to do this, it's because they know that's the path. You could be the stupidest person that graduated from Yale, and it doesn't matter because you graduated from Yale. And that's going to be a signal to the world, to employers, to people who do business with you, to admission programs at other schools. Wow, they graduated from there, that they are either really, really high skilled or they had enough connections to prop them up long enough to get their skill level where they needed to be, right? Because some of these schools, most of these schools have programs for what they call legacy admissions, which basically means, what I said at the very beginning, like your family went there and then they let people in because they, perpetuate that, you're part of our community, you're alumni, and so that's a way people get in. I said to a relative of mine, I had a relative who'd graduated from Harvard University on my side of my family, and I was so mad because no one actually told me this until after I didn't get into Harvard. And I was so mad. I said, if you guys had gotten it together and told me this, I would have put this on my paperwork. It could have been, a legacy admission. Oh yeah, we should have said something. All right, well, we'll let that be. But my point simply is, so I'm not saying that that's totally fair. It's not. What I am saying is that life is, and what I am saying is that people often understand that even if they themselves didn't go to those schools, that's a ticket to make your life easier. And you don't even have to be the best at that place. You just need to finish it. Even the worst skilled surgeon is going to make more money than the best, person who works at a fast food restaurant, just because the skills are more rare. And you don't even have to be the best. You just have to get in there. And that's what I said. A lot of times you'll see that, and especially in families where nobody else has that level of education, they put so much pressure on people. And they say, look, you're going to do this, and you will be a doctor. And you will be, an engineer. And they're so focused on that because those are the professions that they know mean entrees to these professions where you have better income, and then so they put a lot of pressure on people, sometimes unbearable and awful pressure. But you can understand the motives of why people do this. It's not to try to hurt their loved one, their child or grandchild. It's because they understand that that's the way into that life. And so what I'm saying is, if you want to go and earn a doctorate degree, but you don't want to use it, and you don't care about money, it still would benefit you to go somewhere where you're going to learn the best skills you can, which is going to come from the best skilled teachers. I mean, that's just, I can't teach you what I don't know. So the best skilled teachers, it makes obvious logical sense, are going to be at schools that respect them and treat them well. So one of the ways you also want to look and decide where you want to go to school, look at the faculty. You'll see is this. Schools that have these reputations where people often are so competitive to get into, they will very prominently highlight who their faculty are, because their faculty, have gone to amazing schools and have wonderful skills and have won awards and, are leaders in their fields. And so that's one of the reasons that you go there, to be around those people and to learn from them. And you'll see that, I have been fortunate in my own anecdotal experience. I've been around people in community colleges in their classes who are brilliant and really amazing. So, it just depends on that person's life. Maybe they just live in that area. Maybe that's the school that they really enjoy. Maybe it fits their lifestyle or whatever. There are opportunities for you to learn. Now, with the advent of the technology, you can take a lot of programs from the top universities in the world. Now they have, as of the time I'm recording this program, free classes. Now, they're not part of a degree program at this point, but take advantage of that. It's free. And the really weird thing with these recordings, or basically recordings and classes from these top schools, they're called, as of the time of this program, they're called the Massive Online Open Course, or MOOC, right? The really interesting thing, some of the data has shown, this is very early in this process, that the idea, I think part of the idea was, well, you'll get the best, skilled people in the world that often teach at these, really great schools, and then we'll provide a window into that world for everybody in the whole world that's access to the internet can go and see. This is what they're doing at these top schools in the world. This is what these people who are really high skilled are teaching. I know you're not in the same room, I know you're not getting credit, as a student would, but you're there and you're learning that same knowledge. How awesome that is, right? But the early data, again, this is very early, it showed that the majority of the people who sign up for these free, programs already have degrees. So it's perpetuating the same thing that we talked about in this entire program, that this one small minority population from before their kids even born is planning and plotting and supporting and nurturing and incentivizing them to compete, to get the best entrance tests, to get the best admissions to the best schools, to do their best while they're there, to graduate those undergrad programs and move on often to the best graduate programs. And so that same group is the group that when you open up and say, hey, anybody in the world, you can go look and see these classes. That's the same group that said, oh, well, I'd love to see what they're doing at some of these other great schools. And they're the one that are doing it. The problem is that they don't even need the help. The intent wasn't to go have people who already have, degrees from top schools and already, great professions, to give them just more of this awesome knowledge, right? But that's what it's sort of, and it's the thing I think that frustrates people, across the globe. You want this whole idea of leveling the playing field, right? So that we get access to people who are super talented based on being super talented and not just based on that they, were born into a family or a community who prioritized education and gave them the tools and the support and the incentives necessary to help them see what the path forward was. It's difficult to level the playing field, though, because even when you fling open the doors to the most elite institutions in the world, elite not in a negative way, but in a positive way, because that's where people with elite skills are conducting research and sharing knowledge, the hope would be that would then allow everybody, right? Because it's free. And it would be a way for people who don't even really know what college is to sort of see, well, this is what they're doing in some of these, leading institutions in the world. But it's not necessarily what's happening. And it's just, there's a lot of experts and brilliant people working on these issues to try to expand the reach of this. But it's in a way kind of disheartening because it's just reinforcing the problem that already exists. When you look at the data, as I read earlier from the earlier show that I quoted in this show, right? Harvard is already getting 45.6% of people from these top echelons of income. It's already happening. Those numbers are staggering. I mean, ideally, if it was representative, then you'd see Harvard have, 3.8% of their students from families that are the top 3.8% of income, right? If it was representative of just their representation. Or, but to have it be 3.8% of people giving you 45.6%, it's staggering. And my concern, and I guess one of the issues that motivated this program is the people who most would benefit from opening up education and access to people who most need to be at the best school in terms of learning the best skills, who their whole, that would change their entire trajectory of their whole family, of their whole community, of maybe even their whole town. That group isn't there at all in the numbers it should be. Often, not to fault the universities and schools for their recruiting, but often people don't even know those schools exist or how to even get to it. They haven't even done anything you would need to do to apply. They haven't taken the entrance exams. They don't have a clue, what you're supposed to be doing. And they're so removed, from the whole process. And so there are many nonprofits and governmental sector organizations trying to start some, programs here and there, but there has to be, I think, a major public push of this is what's going on. And here's why it would benefit you potentially to explore the highest level skills. Now, again, highest level skills could be in anything. I just saw a great show the other day about people who are mechanics on large jet airplanes. Again, very few skilled people have those skills, so they're paid very well. And there was somebody in an interview saying they need more of these elite skilled people when they need to rehab an entire plane, or retrofit it or something like that. There are very few people that can do that. So it's the same type of thing. It's going to take you time and talent and great teachers. So I don't care what it is. What I am saying, this is in the context of a university setting, if that's the path you're taking, you need to even know that it exists. And you have to understand it matters immensely if you're trying to get entree into that world of opportunity, income, and there are social and other organizations that will potentially enrich your life or at least provide you more choices. So it does matter. And if you have a marketing and the marketing is saying this is easy, that's a red flag. That is a huge red flag that's not going to give you the best skills. Because it makes logical sense that if it was easy and they're telling you it is easy, and it may even be, they have a derogatory term, but it's appropriate in some instances of outright fraud, what they call diploma mills. And it's what it sounds like. It's a place where, in some instances, there's no education that's required. You give them money and they'll give you a piece of paper that says you have a degree. Now, obviously, in that setting, then you have no skills at all. And if somebody were to hire you based on that degree, they'll recognize very quickly that you don't necessarily have the skills. And even if you may have the skills, because sometimes people say, well, I have the skills. I just, I never finished school and I was out of time. So I just went to this place because I already knew what I was doing. The problem is, though, if you go to a place and get a piece of paper and that place has a dubious reputation, because remember, everybody wants the best skilled. So if you go to a place that has a reputation for having best skilled, there's not going to ever be a question. Oh, okay, you went to, this school, and that school's reputation for for really quality skilled people. So great. I'm definitely comfortable, giving you a chance here as my team member or employee. If you go to a place where even though you may have skills and you try to cut corners because you said, hey, I don't have a lot of time, I don't have any money, this place will give me a piece of paper and I already know what I'm doing, you're hurting yourself. Right? Because now it's going to be under suspicion. And why would you do that? Why would you make your life harder? Why don't you just make your life easier? Now, it's going to take time, and it's going to take toil, and it's going to take talent, and it's going to take teaching from people who really have the best skills, comparable, to whatever it is you're trying to do. And all of that is not easy. But it makes your life easier if you invest in that and get the quality, high caliber experience. Then there's never a question or a concern. And if you already have the skills, then good. You'll enjoy the class. It won't be that difficult for you. You might learn something new. Why not do this? Cutting corners hurts you. It does matter. And again, as I said, one of the things that was a motive for this show was these discussions. I've had these discussions for decades with people, but I had another one relatively recently, and I thought, I really need to do a show on this. If you think you can go to a school that does not have that reputation for high skilled, and again, one of the ways you need to check and see who teaches there. Not necessarily the names, because you might not know the names. You might think, well, I don't know the people. Here's the point. Look and see where those people went to school. And you'll start to see the same types of schools. Oh, okay. Oh, they went to University of Virginia. Oh, okay. Oh, I see they're, University of Oklahoma. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. You recognize, right? If it's a school that says they don't even tell you who their faculty are, that's a huge problem. That's a red flag. You cheat yourself when you don't go out and pursue and insist to the best of your ability that you are able to acquire and attain the highest level skills. The only person who is cheated is you. Is it possible that you could go to an easy way and get a piece of paper and then they'll hire you for, to be a full professor with tenure at a leading global university and pay you over, 6 figures a year? Is it possible? Yeah, anything's possible. Is it probable? No. Yes, it's hard. Everything about life is challenging, but usually in a really good way. Yeah, you got to go through the hassle of applying, and the more competitive a school is, the more of a hassle it is, because they're going to want some sort of test records and or other degrees and or track record and documentation and references and essays and all this kind of stuff, or a portfolio. Yeah. If you didn't have all those, if it wasn't that challenging to get into, then what would be the point? If it's something where it's like, oh, it's easy, anybody who's, alive and can give us money gets in, and automatically gets a degree, and there's not any classes and it's not anything that's difficult, then it's not worth anything. And the reason isn't to be elitist or snobby. It's the problem of skills. It all comes down to skills. High-level skills, high-level professional opportunity, often high-level pay, as per supply and demand. Very poor, weak skills, often very poor income. If you want to get the higher level income and the higher level professional opportunity, then you need to develop elite level skills. I don't care what it is. A trade, it could even be, something like cooking. I worked in a fast food restaurant, a long time ago when I was younger. I made minimum wage because it required minimum skills. There were people there who, if they really loved cooking and invested the time and the talent into that career, could go and take that skill. The top cooks and chefs in the world are, the world famous, of course. Even the top wait staff at some of the most renowned restaurants are very well compensated. But it takes time and talent and teaching. I don't care what it is you're doing, whether it's a formal university or not, but does it matter where you go to learn? Yeah, it matters. You need to learn the best level skills from the best level teachers. And it's going to take you a lot of time, relatively speaking, to develop those because you have to keep practicing it yourself. So this is a huge subject. In summation, I would make this couple of points. What do you want? I would argue that if you don't care about financial or professional opportunities, you still should invest in getting the best teachers and the best institutional support so you can learn the best skills, whatever it is. It's art class or basket weaving or whatever. I want to learn from somebody who knows how to do it. If I go to somebody and they don't really know what they're doing, they're not good, they don't have the ability to teach me how to do anything. So I don't care what it is, but find the best teachers. So that matters. If someone's going to exploit you and take advantage of you and say to you, oh, that was college, and it seems pretty easy, if the caliber of the people that were the teachers seemed like they didn't, they didn't really seem like they knew how to do that, or, they had some, things that I looked at and thought, well, that's not written correctly. Those are all red flags. If the place is telling you that it's guaranteed and easy, first of all, how many things in life are guaranteed? Almost nothing. So the really disturbing stories of people being taken advantage of in the U.S., people taking out huge debt, right, for schools or training programs or education experiences that didn't give them any elite level skills, and now they're also really broke and they owe all this debt. That's just, it's to me morally reprehensible. I am trying in this show, which is a huge amount of content that I'm trying to cover, but I was trying to explain why I think some of that happens. And the people who I intended this program to be primarily for are people who are in that group who honestly just don't know. They really don't. They don't know. It's not and through no fault of their own. Like, nobody told you. So if nobody told you in your family or community or friends or anything like that, and the school nobody told you that you went to, maybe middle school or high school, nobody told you, then you don't know. And I'm trying to talk to you and say, I'm trying to tell you. It matters immensely. You have got to understand that there's a whole group, a small percentage of the overall human population, but they exist and they are incredibly competitive, and they have spent their whole lives often focused on attaining the best level education they can. You need to at least understand what's happening and then jump in there and compete in whatever way that you want to. And often if you say to people, hey, I didn't even know this about this PSAT or SAT, and my family doesn't have the money, or I'm in, my foster parents don't have the resources, often there are programs, both government and private sector, that will help and pay for stuff. But you have to speak up and ask for it. Unfortunately, I wish, and my hope would be that in the future, that the society will decide it's worth investing in the best of everyone, that everybody gets the same attention and opportunity in the system, so that even if you came from a family where nobody knew about school or anything, that you would be given extra resources to help you, again, try to level that playing field. But until that happens, you and I have to take responsibility and inform ourselves, and then get out there in an assertive, professional, articulate way, ask for help. I need help. I need a tutor, and I don't have any money. Or I'm in foster care, and I don't have any money. Or my family or whoever I live with, no one even explained to me what this was. But I want the best for myself. And then we've got to get out there and be assertive. And I know it's hard. And I have to close with this anecdote, which is depressing, but I'll share it. So this is years ago. And I was talking to an adult who was sort of, middle in life and trying to get some sort of basic, adult education skills, which is a wonderful, admirable thing, and I was really proud of the adult. But they had a child who I think, was like a early teenager in high school in the U.S. And so they said something to me like, yeah, my daughter, she's talking about she wants to go to Stanford. And I just told her, that's stupid. We don't have any money. And she needs to just stop dreaming like that. Something along those lines. Okay. Even recounting this from memory, I feel like I'm about to just start crying hysterically. That's one of the most depressing things I've ever heard. And it killed me. And what I mean by that emotionally is this. There you had an example of a person, a young person on their own, who did exactly what I just asked you and I to do. We got to inform ourselves. We got to take it, the reins in our own hands and say, you know what? So I didn't get this leg up in life. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to ask for help and I'm going to stay on this until I do everything I can possibly do to help give myself the best shot at getting out there and competing in life and having an awesome life, right? So that young person did that, and their parent, this killed me, says to them, no, don't even bother in dreaming that. We don't have any money. And it was so illogical for like 8 million reasons. Let me explain this to you. If you don't have any money, then you're not going to pay to go to college. What? What did I say? I just said this. One of the reasons why in higher ed it's so frustrating for people is there are grants and scholarships and programs, and most of the really competitive colleges, if you get in there, I'm not making this up. Get out there on the internet and look. Most of the really competitive schools to get into, if you get in there and you seriously are economically not well off, then you're not going to pay anything. That's one of the reasons they have so many wealthy people go there, because those people pay the whole full ticket, and that subsidizes people who don't have any money. Do you understand? Schools desperately want people with the best skills, and they desperately want people with the best skills who didn't come from this same little minority group of people who everybody in their family already went to school, or they, spent their whole entire life prepping and getting extra tutoring and support. They really are looking for that rare person who on their own is just trying to do it. And they're going to go out of their way to ensure you're not going to have to worry about money. You have to tell them this, though. And you have to apply. And the reason I was so emotionally moved and angry, actually, by this parent, but the anger isn't at the parent. I understand why a parent who doesn't know any of this would tell their kid, which I think what the parent was trying to say is they didn't want their child to be disappointed. And that's a universal, beautiful thing. I'm about to get emotional. It's a universally beautiful thing for a parent to not want their child to be disappointed and hurt. And I can understand why if a parent didn't know and thought to themselves, well, that's a fancy school. And fancy schools are for rich people. And we're not rich, so I don't want you to apply. Because I don't want your heart to be broken when I have to tell you again we can't send you there. I'm not upset at the parent who did that because I understand that came from a place of love. I just am upset at the society that put someone in that situation where they made such a self-destructive error. How does that parent not know that if you're lower income or no income, it's not going to cost you anything? And they really would love your kid to come there because their numbers are skewed for rich people, right? So even if you and I know, and you're listening, and you're in the show, and you think, well, I knew all this. Maybe there's somebody in your community, somebody in your extended family, somebody in your social group that doesn't know. Maybe there's a local school or community group you can go speak to in your free time and share the message, because the message is not getting out there. People do not understand. And out of the best intentions, people are yanking away the opportunity to an entirely awesome professional life because they just don't know. So that's what we're doing. That's what the show's about. And I'm asking you, I ask a lot, I know. I ask you to come to CourtneyAnderson.com. I ask you to look at our sponsors. I ask you to share on social media. I ask you to sign up for our community email newsletter. But I'm really seriously am asking more. I'm asking you to get the word out. People have got to understand that this is a competition and it's a global competition. And there are more and more resources than ever before to try to give people a shot with open courses, with free books and resources. But you have got to tell people so that they understand they've got to compete and they've got to get in this game. And you get out there and you apply and you work hard and you ask for help and you say to people, I don't have any money. I don't have any money for the test. They have a program for every single one of these tests that if you don't have any money and you fill out some documentation or whatever, then you don't have to come up with the money. They're not going to say you're not going to be able to apply to go to college because you don't have any money. But the thing is, nobody, that's not true. Let me be really fair. There are people who devote their entire life, and I mean their entire life, to trying to get the word out. But it's not something where one person alone can do this. So I'm asking you, and I myself am saying I'm going to continue to do everything I can think of, and you're going to keep working with me, and we're going to try to share and pick up some of the burden to get the word out. What's the word? Compete. Apply. Money is not an issue. What I mean by that is these schools, the best schools, desperately want people with that narrative. Well, I don't have any money. I never have family with no money. No one in my family went to college. That's what everybody wants. Because the diversity numbers in terms of economic and socioeconomic class are not great. And you can see why, right? So the people who most would benefit by going to get the best skills don't go do that, often because they're told not to even bother to try by well-meaning family and friends, and in some instances even schools. So we're going to do what we can to try to offset that. Of course, yes, everybody needs to apply. And we have to not be anything but proud of ourselves and never ever upset or embarrassed or ashamed to ask for help and to say to people, look, here's the deal. I don't have any money, none, not any. I can't pay for this. I want to do this. And then we've got to get out there, whether it's on the internet or asking questions from credible sources. And we've got to get the best education for ourselves and our families and our communities, or we hurt them immensely. And that's not what anybody wants. And I'm telling you as clearly as I possibly can, it matters immensely, depending on, of course, what you want to do. But no matter what you want to do, you need to learn from the best. And if somebody's telling you it's easy and they're making it really easy for you, there's often a reason. We also mentioned this adage that we've talked about in other shows. If somebody says something is free, it may be, but often you're the product. And sometimes they're exploiting you. So if you have any specific questions or concerns, just contact me. But I really do encourage you to understand that it's a healthy, I think, a healthy competition for the best. You deserve absolutely the best of whatever it is you desire. But you got to understand what's happening. And you have to start paying attention. And then you have to get out there and start doing everything in your power to attain the best skills. And I don't care what other people tell you. They may not, some people actually don't even want the best for you. It's not personal, but they just might not care. I want the best for you, and more importantly than me, you want the best for you. So let's make this happen. It does matter. We're going to get the best skills from the best schools that have the best teachers, and we're going to put the time and the toil and the talent. And yeah, it's going to be frustrating, and some days we're going to want to give up, but we won't. And we're going to come out of this with the best skills, and then we're going to continue over the course of our life to learn new things and to have a life that's full of adventure and opportunity. And it's going to be, on many days, amazing. And I'm very proud of you for being here in the program today, and I continue to be grateful to you for investing in yourself and allowing me to be part of your journey toward, again, surpassing your goals.